All right. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for being here on this rainy evening. We really appreciate your time for this very important discussion. My name is Clyde Bunyan, and I'm the managing editor for Opinion and Community Engagement at the Oklahoman, and we welcome you to this event. This is a conversation for this community specifically. One of the things, the reasons we're doing this is because during the course of this election season, one of the things that we noticed was that we've been getting a lot of commentary on a variety of topics related to issues related to the candidates. And we realized that one particular community we have not heard from is the Latino community. And so we tried to see if we can have a conversation in the community, and that's why we're here, before the election, because we want to hear from you. We thought that it's really important to amplify community voices from all communities, and we thought we would really like to share your concerns, learn how you feel about things, and share it with a wider audience. Now, for your purposes, we want to invite you to take advantage of our opinion platform. Every week, we have a section in the newspaper called Viewpoints, and Viewpoints invites community voices. It invites the community to let us help you amplify your voice to the decision makers, the policy makers, to just spread it a little more, spread it around, to help foster conversations, deeper, meaningful conversations on issues that matter not only to you, but to the community at large. And so I urge you to take advantage of that opportunity. It's open. It doesn't cost you anything. There's a QR code that will be scrolling on the screen. There's a contact list on how to reach us. So, and if you can't see that, then see me afterward. So the reason we're here is really to hear from you and to hear from these community leaders. With that, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce our panelists. Make sure I say everyone's name correctly. Okay, so we have Sam Wargin Grimaldo, who's an attorney with Michael Brooks Jimenez, PC. On the end, wave Sam. Leslie Friday. Leslie is a student and a little activist, I hear, from Oklahoma City Community College. Angelica Villalobos, Executive Director of Immigrant Connexion Empowerment. Erika Lucas, CEO of Stitchcrew and a partner in Vest Her Ventures. Salvador Ontiveros, CEO of the Latino Community Development Agency. And Representative Arturo Alonso-Sandoval, who represents District 89. Our moderators this evening is Yesenia Jimenez from the Oklahoman and Daschel Chavez from Telemundo. Before we start, I really want to say a special thank you to Tango PR and Brenda and Jorge Hernandez. Without them, we really would be unable to pull this off this evening. And we really appreciate your partnership. So right now, here's Yesenia and Daschel.
Thank you all again for making it to this event. I know we put it together fairly quickly, so I'm very grateful to all the community organizations that gathered to make this event possible. We are honored to have you all with us tonight for this important conversation. Our goal tonight is to foster a meaningful dialogue about the role of Latino leadership, civic duty, and cultural identity.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of double back on that. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you for all the audience for being here. It's super important for the Hispanic community, the Latino community to come together and vote, because we all know about all the things that are happening in politics, and yet our community doesn't actually go out and vote, and we don't actually go out and share our voice. But when we hear something that is going to affect us, we start fighting for it. We all know about HB 4156. We'll bring that up here in a bit. But this entire building was filled with community leaders, with people sharing and fighting over it. And so we wanted to come together to kind of talk about why we should continue to fight, not just when one small thing comes up that might affect our direct community, but why we should continue to fight in all platforms and in all ways and in all elections. And so if you want to continue to pay attention and continue to fight with us, you can definitely reach out to the Oklahoman, and we're also going to be covering it on Telemundo.
To start, can each of you share a bit about how your background has influenced your civic engagement and leadership journey?
Is that working? Okay. I'll start because my microphone says number 1 on it. So thank you all for having us. Thanks for putting this together. I agree it's an incredibly important conversation to have. The way my background, can you repeat that again? The way my background
Yeah, so
influences?
share about how your background has influenced your civic engagement and leadership journey.
Okay, yeah. So I grew up here in South Oklahoma City in the Capitol Hill District. It's where I still live, and I start every introduction with that because I feel like it's so elemental to who I am. It tells a story of a community of immigrant roots, right? I grew up in what I consider was a blossoming of the Latino community in Oklahoma City in the 1980s, 1990s. And to see our community grow to the powerful force that we are now, I think is kind of really what's influenced me. But more than that, it's been being able to kind of see the differences in how our community is treated, how our side of town is treated and discussed. Whether it's talking about things like HB 4156 or just the fact that we get less resources down here on the south side, that our schools are paid less attention to, that our issues are not the ones that are discussed at in tables where decisions are being made. And I think that's starting to change now, and it's because of the work of a lot of people up here, a lot of people in the audience, and within our community, they're doing that. And so that's what continues to motivate me and influence me to get involved civically.
Yeah, so I'm an immigrant Latina from Mexico. I migrated here with my single mother at the time and my sister, not knowing a lick of English, to rural Oklahoma. And I'm a mother, right? I'm a mother of 2 beautiful Latinas, one of them gay. So a lot of what is being discussed affect them, you know, and I think that we need to move on from this notion of like, oh, let's not talk about politics because everything is political. The way money flows is political. You know, who gets funded, who doesn't get funded. I also support entrepreneurs through our organization. And imagine this, despite being 20% of the population and owning more than 5 million businesses across the United States, contributing $800 billion to our economy annually, we receive less than 2% of venture capital. How can that be? Latinas are launching businesses 6 times faster than any other demographic, and they get less than 0.5% of venture capital, right? So there's a lot of disproportion, and if you follow where the money flows, it's political. So for me to say that why are you engaged civically or why are you engaged politically, I think the question we should be asking ourselves is why aren't we getting politically engaged, because our communities are being affected by it.
I think I wasn't prepared with the microphone. I usually like to go last when I'm invited to speak, and the reason is I like to hear the point of views of everybody in the panels, because the way it has shaped. I also grew up in Oklahoma. I am originally from Mexico. I was brought in as an 11-year-old girl, so it's been more than half of my life here in the U.S. I am the mother of 5 U.S. citizen children, 2 which are already registered voters. My 20-year-old daughter will be voting for federal elections for the first time this year. And discussing when the work that I've done in the community as an activist at the beginning of I consider this a career, an unpaid career, but I consider this a career because there's not a lot of people within our community that has, I guess as a dreamer, when we identify that, there's a lack of information within the community. We're not as involved in the voting process, but also because nobody takes the time to come to our communities. That was, like Erika was mentioning, they don't pay attention to that. They follow the money, and the people that are underserved, like in our community, mainly is because we lack the language and the understanding about the voting process and the stigma of whether we deserve to be here or whether we're deserving of funds in our community. And one of the things that I started advocating for, it was mainly for the opportunity to be seen. And that completely shaped. I think that once, it was a little bit before DACA was approved, but when I got involved in knowing the knowledge that I do now, it's like I can't go back. And having the community doing that voice, it is understandable, like you mentioned, our community is not really involved, but it's because the voting process is very complex. And the majority of our people lack the knowledge and the understanding of that, and there's very little people that invest time in that. So the funds never bring back to the community. And one of the things that angers me all the time about politics is how every single election they use us as scapegoats. And is the reason why I can't stop. And I've been trying to take a break because it is exhausting. But seeing like what happened with HB 4156 this year, it makes it near impossible for me to look the other way. But this is the reason why I get involved and is shaped. I can see the power of the knowledge, and I can see I am not a U.S. citizen, but I've been involved in election campaigns federally as well as locally, and I can see the power that I have as a non-citizen to be able to also help shape who gets elected, right? So that's why I'm here.
Similar to some of the people we've heard, I'm the son of an immigrant parents from Mexico, and they resided here in Oklahoma because, my dad, we had some family over here, and it's one of those stories where, they migrated away from their small town in Guanajuato, Mexico, to the south side of Oklahoma City in search of more opportunities for their sons, so my brothers and I. And my parents, even though they didn't go too far in their education, they really did a really good job to make sure we had everything we needed. We didn't have a whole lot. I do come from a background of a low-income family, having immigrant parents, and also having an older brother with a disability really got my brother and I to grow up really quick because we had to be that bridge whenever we were at the hospitals translating for them. and really trying to understand what the doctors were telling us, and then translating that to our parents. So at a very young age, I think it was around the time whenever I was in middle school, I really started seeing how a lot of the systems, especially in Oklahoma, weren't really built for families like mine. Family where your parents, they're still, trying to grasp the language, trying to understand how to really, really establish themselves here. And it's really inspiring because it's one of those things where, they come with nothing oftentimes, but they make something out of it. And they really work hard to push their family forward. And I know that's something I saw in my parents a lot. And that's one of the big reasons I felt motivated to really ponerme las pilas. In English, I guess the direct translation would be put the batteries on, but it doesn't sound that good in English. It just means to really focus and get engaged, because I knew focusing on my education was my way out to be able to continue supporting my family. My plan was never really to get into politics. I've always grown up being big into STEM and engineering, but really wanting to solve problems. But it was in high school whenever I started getting more involved with the different leaders in the community. So I remember it was my senior year. Senator Michael Brooks came to my school and spoke to me about who he was and what he was doing. And I was like, you know what, we need more people that are willing to, come to these schools that oftentimes we didn't see a lot of leaders visit, schools in the South Side. So the few that did, I always try to pay attention because, recognizing that South Oklahoma City does lack in different resources. Oftentimes we haven't had the best leadership, and it's predominantly made up of, low-income families that are doing as much as they can to provide for their families and for themselves. But there is a lot of gaps, a lot of lacking resources. So anytime there was leaders really working hard to make a difference and make an impact, I knew that was something that I wanted to invest time in, invest energy in, and mobilize some of my friends. In full circle, those same leaders ended up seeing something in me that I didn't see in myself. Because I think, like a lot of young people, the plan for me after graduating college was to leave the state, pursue an engineering job, and maybe eventually come back. But I knew I always loved Oklahoma. My family's here. And that's one of the big reasons that got me involved in politics and eventually running for office. Because oftentimes we don't see a lot of people, that look like us, talk like us, and really understand our stories representing us. And representation is important. It's one of those things where, if you can't see it, you can't really dream it. It wasn't until I started seeing young Latinos pursuing degrees in engineering, pursuing degrees in wanting to be the next doctors, lawyers, that I really felt like I could do it myself too. And it's one of the things that continues being a motivator to make sure we're moving forward in different ways in the state. And oftentimes we see a lot of rhetoric being thrown out that attacks Latinos or attacks immigrants. And it is oftentimes misguided because we haven't had the right people in that room or the right people haven't had a seat at the table. And I know that's a big thing we're constantly trying to work on because Latinos make up around a quarter of Oklahoma City, but we lack in that representation when it comes to the state government. And I know that's a big effort we're trying to change within the Latino Legislative Caucus, but I'd say that was a big motivator, just seeing people try to make a difference and really inspiring young Arturo to want to make a difference too.
Hello. Okay. Well, for me, as many of the other panelists, we grew up here in OKC. I grew up here in the south side of OKC, and growing up as well, we do see the lack of resources and things we see that we can improve on. But it didn't really hit me until we were actually hit with HB 4156. That's when, I finally realized, wow, why haven't we been doing anything major in the past? And so from there, that's when I started, getting committed with clubs in school like HSA and other organizations that do help promote civic engagement. Because just the idea of having a better Oklahoma for Hispanics is what really motivates me now. And just because there isn't a hateful bill on the radar doesn't mean that, it's the last time we're going to see something like this. And so we should continue to go and keep fighting and still do some good work here and promote civic engagement always.
Right. Well, first of all, just an honor to sit here on this panel with these wonderful leaders, people that believe in change, and it's just an honor for me to be here with you guys. Similar to my panelists here, I grew up Southside. My parents migrated here when I was 1, and we grew up on 33rd and Walker. And so, growing up, I'm not sure if I saw the lack of resources or just the difference until I went to high school, and I went to class on the north side where I saw the difference in just the educational system, right? Like I would go to school and I would have homework and I would have books and I would have, you know, all of these resources. And then when I come back home on the south side, I would have friends that did not have any of that. And so very early on, I recognized that there was a difference here, and I didn't understand why that was. And so ever since I was a young person, I participated in different programs. I sought out different mentors. I participated in different organizations to try to understand how this works and how we can further invest in our communities. And so I really have grown up with this type of understanding or needing to make a difference. Today, I'm the president and CEO of the Latino Community Development Agency, and very early on when I started, I recognized the power, right? The tremendous potential that the Latino community has currently. You know, one in 5, I believe, Oklahomans are Latinos. Up to 62% of our students in Oklahoma City Public Schools are Latinos. That's a lot of potential. That's a lot of taxpayers. That's a lot of voters that are coming up the ranks. And so how do we activate them? How do we ensure that they know and understand their power? Well, at the agency, since February, we have begun to help our community members register to vote. We did a voter registration drive in February, and then I was invited to record a PSA on all Spanish-speaking stations, inviting our community members to come to the agency, and we will help them, register to vote, either with the form, the paper form, or the navigate the online form. And I got to tell you, we have seen a very consistent stream of community members coming to the agency and registering to vote, which is huge, which is really, really encouraging. Now it's time to encourage them, empower them, help them come up with a plan to get to the polls, right, and exercise their right and responsibility as voters. And so at our back table here, we have, through a partnership with the Women's Voters League, we have material back there, a voter's guide, nonpartisan, sharing all of the things, the questions that are on the ballots and the people that are up for election. I encourage you guys to pick one up. And then we also have these 4x6 cards that allows you to plan on the day of to vote. I think it's important that we, again, encourage and empower and activate the Latino population here in Oklahoma City, because we have an advantage, and we just need to recognize that. If not now, then when, right? So, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you all for sharing your journeys and how that has inspired you to maintain your civic engagement within the community. Erika, you've built resources through Vest Her Ventures that empower Latina women in business and leadership roles. How does economic empowerment, particularly for Latina women, support increased civic engagement within our communities?
Yeah, well, first of all, I love this question because I think earlier somebody, mentioned the lack of participation or civic engagement in our Hispanic community, Latino community. And I think a lot of that has to be with the fact that, there's a huge wealth gap still in this country when it comes to race and gender. And, if every day you have to think about whether or not you're going to be able to put food on your table, or whether or not you're going to be able to pay for school supplies, or if you're a business owner, whether or not you're going to make payroll that week to support your staff. It's really hard to think, oh, let me go out and volunteer to, to speak, or in Oklahoma, we make it really hard for people to vote. And we also have so many elections. And for a lot of our Latino community, I'm sorry, forgot. But we're working, right? We pride ourselves in hard work, and we are getting up from 6 in the morning, and sometimes we didn't get home until 8 p.m. And then if we're women, unfortunately, as a country, women have become the safety net of America, right, as caregivers. So we go and work really hard at work, and then we come home and we do the unpaid labor at home, which is cooking, house cleaning, taking care of our kids, putting them to bed, and all of that stuff. So we're tired. And all of this has to do with economic mobility, right? As more of our families get more economic mobility, don't have to worry about the paycheck, don't have to worry about whether or not they can put food on the table, don't have to worry whether or not they can buy the supplies and those basic needs, then we can expect them to get more educational and resources. Then we can expect them to volunteer more. Then we can expect them to be more vocal. But I think it's everything. When I started both Stitchcrew and Vest, a lot of people said, well, why don't you focus on political engagement, within those sectors that you want to help? And I'm like, no. Before I ask my community to get engaged politically, I need to help them get wealth. And then when they get wealth, then they can start, and then we also know how politics work. Unfortunately, a lot of it moves through money. Right? You can ask our candidate, whether it's Michael or Arturo, they have to raise funding to get elected, right? And all of that, it requires funding. And so I think that for me, when people were asking me to do political engagement, I'm like, no. We first need to work on getting our families stable, and then we need to help them build wealth, and then we need to help them compound that wealth, and then we can expect them to pay it forward and reinvest some of that wealth into our communities.
Angelica, would you say that the topic of economic empowerment resonates within the immigrant communities and their ability to be resilient?
Yes, I think that we saw recently through the advocacy that was done with HB 4156, I saw the pain of the community of everything that was happening, but as well the people that wanted to be present and they couldn't because they couldn't risk their financial situation, like getting fired from their job. I completely agree that if we had the money and the time, we would have the time. I say that from experience myself as well. I often talk about sacrifices because there's been times when I've been politically engaged and done a lot of advocacy. I have sacrificed time from work as well as time with my children because I haven't been able to, I can't do both, right? And I think that we can see that within the community. When we asked them to show up, they did, right? But even within their family, like in my case, a family of 7, half of them were able to go, half of them couldn't, right? But I always tell them is at least there's representation from our home. Because sometimes we have to split the family when we have issues that we care about and we want to be there, and it feels horrible when you wanted to be there and because of your situation economically, you can't, right? I agree that the community needs to, I don't want to put nobody on the spot, but Pastor Chano Najera used to bring, I don't know if he still does, but he used to bring food to the people in Chihuahua. And people, I would hear sometimes when he said, you got to feed the people first before you go and preach to them. And otherwise, they're not going to listen to you. And I think that you have to, we have to do that in our communities, right? We got to make sure that they're doing well. If you don't take care of them, they're not going to want to be part of it, or they're not going to be able to be part of that. So definitely the disadvantage economically within the Hispanic community, it's huge, and we can see that every day.
Now, a question for Salvador. So, as the president of the Latino Community Development Agency, how do LCDA resources help bridge the gap between community needs and civic engagement?
Sure. So, growing up, I participated in programs at the agency. My family received services at the agency. I volunteered. I was an intern there. They introduced me to a college recruiter at Oklahoma City University who ultimately gave me a full ride scholarship. Like, I have a lot of love and appreciation for that organization. And that's just one person. There's endless number of people that have been impacted, that have been supported by the agency in the last 33 years of its existence. And so we have a sort of, let's say, clout, right? Trust in the community. We provide over 24 programs that include mental health programs, violence programs. We've offered, we also have child care, health programs like nutritional classes, and diabetes and prediabetes screenings, and we also have prevention and youth programs. Over 24 programs, and we touched over 40,000 people last year. And so I think that the organization has this level of trust with the organization, and I think our goal, more importantly, is to make them aware of the power of their voice, right? The power of their vote. And making sure that this is not just a right that they have, but also a responsibility that they have to themselves and to their families. We have to vote. We have to participate in the process, else things are not going to change, right? We have to make sure that they understand that that is what we need from them. We need their voices to be heard. And, we hope to hopefully provide a very safe space for them to ask questions and find resources. We're also, next week on Tuesday, we're hosting a informational session on the new bond that is going to be up for vote next year. We want to learn more about what the needs are of our community, what streets need to be addressed, what parks need to be fixed, what are the things that are most needed in our part of town, and we provide that safe space for them to ask those questions and hopefully offer those suggestions. And so I think the Latino Agency in a lot of ways has touched just thousands and thousands of people throughout the years. I cannot take credit for any of that. I've only been there a year, but this organization means the world to a lot of people. And if we can provide that little bit of connection with what's going on in the city at large and the state at large, and just show them how to get to where they want to go, we're happy to do that.
And then, so a follow-up for both you and Erika. What challenges, if any, have you guys encountered while promoting civic engagement within the community?
Yeah, I've lost investors in our firm. I'm sure I've lost VAS members that may have decided not to join our organization after hearing me be so vocal. But your first question is like, why did I get civically engaged? Some of us don't have the luxury not to, right? Like, some of us, our communities are being targeted. Our communities are being stereotyped as criminals. Like, a lot of my friends, and I work in venture capital, that's like Uber. I don't even know how to describe us, but as an asset. But a lot of my peers say, you shouldn't be speaking out, or you shouldn't be so vocal because you might lose investors, you might do all of this. But I mentioned I'm an immigrant myself. What a lot of people don't understand too about the Latino community is that it took my mom. I was able to become a U.S. citizen faster than my mom, and it took my mom more than 20 years to finally get through the immigration process. And for a lot of those 20 years, she wasn't necessarily undocumented because the federal government knew where she was. She was in the process of getting her documents. So when we call, oh, there's 11 million undocumented people, some of them are actually they're in the system. They're waiting 10, 20 years to go through the entire process. It's so broken. And what a lot of people don't understand is that I may be in venture capital and doing all of those cool things, but half of my family are still waiting for immigration status. And that is the truth for a lot of our families. A lot of our families have people within our families that are still struggling, right? That are being threatened with being deported, even though they've been here most of their life. And so some of us don't have the luxury. So I've lost, like I said, investors. I've lost friendships for sure. Although I question whether they were actual friends at the beginning. But has it hurt us? Yes, absolutely. I just don't have the luxury not to speak up.
So I'll go the other way in that sometimes, mi gente, we get in our own ways, right? Like I've had conversations with community members, and sometimes they downplay or don't believe that voting or participating in the process will ever make a difference, which is super frustrating. There are people out there that just either have these opinions that have been stemmed from their home country, that elections don't work, nothing's going to change. Why even participate? Why even vote? And so changing that mindset and making sure that they understand that if we do have a plan to vote, if we are informed of what is on the ballot and who is running for election, making sure that we show up and participate, that their change can happen. And so changing that mindset and making sure they understand the power of their vote has been, I think, a challenge. And so that's why at the agency we're doing the best that we can to inform them of what their rights are, their responsibility, like I said earlier, providing resources like a non-partisan document magazine from the Women's Voters League that shows everything that's going to be on the ballot, all the different people that are going to be that are up for election, and information that they can study up on and be prepared to go to the polls. And so sometimes it's us, so we got to work on that.
So now we're going to segue into the topic of Latino representation in politics and law. Arturo, you represent a historically underserved area in Southside Oklahoma City and have a unique perspective as one of the youngest members in the state legislature. How do you work to amplify Latino voices within state government, especially with election issues affecting our community?
Thank you for that question. And just to give you a little bit of context about House District 89, and a lot of the district in South Oklahoma City, we have another representative, Mickey Dollins, from a district just south of mine. But my district has one of the highest populations of Latinos in the entire state. But it's also one of the districts with the lowest amount of voter turnout in the entire state. And Oklahoma's already last in the nation according to a lot of different metrics when it comes to voter turnout and civic engagement. And it is one of those things similar to what Eric and a few of our other panelists have mentioned that, because of things like work and other barriers, oftentimes many of our community members don't have the privilege to get more involved politically. Because we do, our community does have to work oftentimes more hours, pick up additional shifts, work multiple jobs to be able to make ends meet, because the economy is impacting a lot of our low-income families in ways that makes it hard for them to really want to participate or be able to participate. Because sometimes they do want to participate. So there is that challenge. Being one of the few Latinos that we have in office, it can be a challenge to get more people involved. Like Salvador mentioned, oftentimes I do have conversations with members that of our community that they do bring in those mindsets from maybe their home country where they didn't have trust for government. And I know that, a big point I try to drive is that change is more possible here if we put in the work, if we start participating. But it's also been important for someone like myself to also recognize, oftentimes they don't have the ability to do and do so because we gotta make ends meet. So then how do we continue getting more people involved and get more people engaged? Because representation does matter. I know historically it's hard for people like myself to feel like we even belong in places like the Capitol. Earlier this year, we had one of the largest peaceful demonstrations at the Oklahoma Capitol, and it was people that had never been to our state capitol that were walking in and being there for the very first time. And just in talking to people, you can tell that there's fear. There's a sense of like, man, like I don't know if I'm supposed to be here. Are they going to ask for, just question me? But I know it's been really encouraging to talk to a lot of the leaders and show that and show them like, hey, like we do belong in the political world. We do deserve to have a voice. With the help of organizations like LULAC, Dream Act Oklahoma, and other leaders within the community, we've collaborated in organizing town hall events when we call them Tú tienes una voz, to remind people that they have a voice, and that voice has a huge impact when it comes to where our political decisions are going. Because Latinos do make up the largest and one of the fastest growing demographics in all of the United States, including Oklahoma. And in some places, that's why sometimes like, man, I don't know if I want to call us a minority group, because in places like Texas, we're already the majority. And that's going to be continuing to be a reality moving forward. The United States is going to continue to become more and more Latino. And one thing to recognize as well is that our community isn't a monolith. We're not all Democrats, we're not all Republicans, we're a little bit of everything. And one of the things I really appreciate about Latinos is that we tend to reject extremism. In places like Oklahoma, we see a lot of extremism, especially on the conservative side, just because we're such a red state. And I think it's refreshing to see that a lot of Latinos do disengage from that extremism. And we try to really moderate what those political conversations are, or where they're going. So I think that's one of the things that really makes me proud about our community, that we tend to be more moderates. We tend to really try to see both sides, because I know I have family members, friends, neighbors that fall within both sides, and we don't agree on everything, but we're at least able to have a conversation. And I remember earlier this year, whenever we were dealing with 4156, we brought in a lot of people that was their first time they were ever in the same room together. I think before that, we had different community leaders, butting heads, but I think we realized that, before all of our differences, we had so many things that really bounded us together. Really that desire to want to achieve the American dream. I know that's a big thing that a lot of the panelists up here have really shown me, that we're always trying to fight for that American dream, to make sure our families are taken care of. And in doing so, our community contributes so much to the state of Oklahoma. And those are the voices and the kind of perspectives we really need to keep elevating. Because when we talk about representation, oftentimes the wrong narratives are being represented. The false narratives, false and negative stereotypes about Latinos, about immigrants being criminals, traffickers, all these different things that aren't backed up by actual data or statistics, but they're intended to make people scared and eventually make people angry. But we know as Latinos who we are as people of family, people of faith, and people that are really working hard to contribute to their families, and in doing so, they contribute in so many different ways to the state and to the economy as well.
All right, so now a question for Sam. Sam, from a legal perspective, what role do you think education and advocacy play in empowering Latinos to understand and exercise their civic rights?
Education and advocacy, what role does it play in helping Latinos understand and practice their civic rights? So I'm going to take this from the perspective as a teacher. I did teach for 3 years in OKCPS at U.S. Grant High School. Right? Go Generals. And I think as far as education, the role it plays it's similar for me, and I think Salvador mentioned this too. We both went to the same high school class in SCS. We had the luxury of going to a school that was well-resourced. And so for me, it presents that first opportunity to kind of notice what is being given to you. What are the public goods that are being provided to you? And is it what you deserve? And in many cases, the answer to that question, especially in places like South Oklahoma City, is that no, we deserve more, we deserve better, and we should be working to make that more equitable. And so that's one, and I think it's important because a lot of students see that and feel the effects of that lack of investment, lack of attention, and they detach from it. They detach from not just education, they detach from civic engagement. So if to them, they're not being shown that they're important by the people who are deciding how those funds are distributed, then they don't feel like they need to engage in education, that they shouldn't trust any politician or any person making decisions in government, right? But at the same time, it also provides the opportunity for the opposite of that. We can engage those students at that level. We can show them that they can get involved in the process. And whether or not the outcomes that they want to happen are the result of their actions, they still took part in that. They still participated in it, and that's the important part of it, right? So you launch into things like advocacy. We see people like Leslie getting involved in the political civic process because they're so moved and they've been encouraged maybe by a teacher or an administrator in their school or a counselor or something like that, right? So it provides you that opportunity. Legally, I think you can look at it from this type of perspective, right? So students and schools are impacted by so many intersecting realities, right? So you're a student in school, but you're also your parents' kid, right? So their issues affect you. So what your parents are experiencing in places like U.S. Grant High School are labor issues, are legal issues, right? Maybe even the kids or the parents get involved in the criminal legal system, right? So there's so many intersecting issues that are all a product of political processes that these students and their parents and families are impacted by. So I see that as a way that we, whether it's a legal society or from a legal approach, we can impact that. As legislators, you can pass or propose and pass policy that impacts and affects the way that students are experiencing life or experiencing their education. Economic policy, how does that impact their parents' ability to show up to their school functions, to show up to community events like this? I mean, it's been a recurring theme where we've been talking about here, right? Is that, especially within a working class community, which a lot of the Latino Hispanic community is, it's hard for us to show up to these extracurricular events because we're so bogged down with the reality of having to survive. But if we are able to pass just policies, just economic policies that allow for a better wage, right? I mean, that's one thing we could do here in Oklahoma is increase the minimum wage, and there's a process to do that, but I won't go into the details of why that's being delayed right now. But there's things we can do at the legislative point to improve people's lives, to improve their ability to engage, to be their own advocates, to realize their own agency and the power to affect things in their communities.
So regarding Oklahoma House Bill 4156, it introduces impermissible occupation as a new criminal offense, which allows authorities to apprehend and deport individuals without legal authorization. Angelica, from your experience as an advocate, how do you see laws like these affecting Latino communities, and what role does civic engagement play in addressing such policies?
Well, I want to address first that it doesn't just impact Latino communities, because we have a lot of indigenous people that look Latino. And we also have a lot of Caucasians that look Latino. So when these type of laws are intended to target one group of people, they don't realize that the communities are so diverse now, multiracial, biracial, that it doesn't just affect Latino communities. And one of the things that is one of my pet peeves, that when they introduce something thinking, oh, it's just for Latinos. No, it's not. And they're not all Latinos are not also undocumented. So these type of policies affect in a way that it opens, well, first of all is criminalizing people for just the way they look. Because like I said, it's not about status. It's about the way this community looks like, right? All my children being U.S. Born citizens are Mexican American, right? And they will be targeted. When they propose these type of laws and they get approved, they're not even looking at the consequences, because they don't care. They're not looking for the consequences. They're just looking at scapegoating, using the group of people and cater to voters that are very, very extremely conservative, right? So sometimes, at least in the advocacy part of it, I try to educate people to look, and this conversation that I had with Arturo Alonso at the beginning is sometimes you don't even have to be pro-immigrant about these type of policies, right? Because it's unconstitutional, first of all. And when people love the rule of law, it's like you're breaking the law from just suggesting this horrendous type of policy. You know, and when it comes to they're all about the Constitution and the power the Constitution have, and they're all about talking patriotism, right? And being loyal and all of this, but then they go back promoting these type of laws. So it's also not about, oh, I'm going to be very vocal about my issues and what I want to fight for, when I'm like, they're breaking the law from day one, right? And it's also, like I said, it goes back to attacking a group of people thinking, oh, this is the people we're going to attack. But when we talk about the issues that whether it's just them, you know, I'm a U.S. citizen. I can prove I'm a U.S. citizen. Are you going to carry your birth certificate everywhere you go? Because how are they going to enforce these type of laws? You always think about it. They don't. First, the Oklahoma City Police came out and said they're not even giving us funding for training, so they're just throwing this out there, right? Politicians don't often are right on the best interests of their citizens. They're not always. There's something behind it, and they're acting on behalf of the few versus the whole. And it's kind of hard to see within the perspective in the community and the advocacy. And addressing, when I do a lot of the information, and I was actually teaching ESL and citizenship, and I don't like to be a teacher for citizenship, honestly. I am passionate about the work that I do, and I often contradict the book because it's so horrible, the situation right now within policy. And when the elections come, it's like it gets worse, right? So it's difficult. It's very difficult, but education and open mind is what I often deal with in the community about. You know, you have to, before you even share or anything when it comes to the policy, like always think about it. And I think that I might have went off a little bit on the question as well.
No, I actually think you answered it perfectly.
So kind of to follow up on HB 4156 as well. So for Leslie, you've taken a stance against this very specific bill and expresses frustration with political leaders. Can you speak on how young people in the Latino community view these laws and the impact that they have on civic participation and the trust in government?
Yeah, of course. So before the introduction of HB 4156, I wasn't really aware of what was going on politically, nor what was happening regarding our community. That was until they introduced HB 4156. For the first time, I felt the fear of my friends, my family, and my classmates. And that's when I eventually felt afraid. And so with that, you know, there had to be something done, whether it be me or anyone else, but I knew I wasn't seeing enough, so the next day I had to go to my principal and start a walkout. So from there, I see many Hispanics driven by fear. Those were the things that I was driven by. So we continued the fight, but when I saw the rally, I saw a change. I saw us being united by this law. So from there, I mean, we joined these organizations, HSA, Build Oklahoma, LULAC, but we shouldn't be driven by fear. We should be driven by hope, and hoping that we can make a difference and put trust in our government, because we were afraid for a very long time, but it has to stop now. And we have to start getting involved and being engaged and know what's going on. So that next time we see something like this, we aren't driven by fear, we're driven by hope.
So now we will be taking questions from the audience. If you haven't yet, scan that QR code on the screen and you'll be able to submit questions anonymously.
Can I tag on to Leslie's answer there? I think you really touched on something important there, is that a lot of times we are motivated by fear, and that's what gets us to show up. I mean, like Daschel mentioned, this room was jam-packed. There was standing room only when we had a town hall here when HB 4156 was announced. And I think that's one thing that we recognize a lot, and Erika and I have talked about this too, is people show up when there's that dramatic action that happens, right? A bill is proposed, put into motion, that's going to affect our community directly. But we should be getting involved all the time. We should be involved in hope-led politics, but we should also be getting involved and engaged in other fights that are out there too, whether it's for the LGBTQ plus community, the African-American community, women in general, people who are minorities in any way, right? We should be getting involved all the time because everything is going to come around to us. If they realize they can take advantage of and discriminate against one group of people, they're going to do it to another group of people. So every fight is our fight.
And just to continue a little bit about that, I mean, definitely agree with both Leslie and Sam because we don't always want to be reactive when it comes to a lot of the issues that come out. And the more involved the community gets, just with anything and everything, because we have a lot of families, and a lot of those kids are in schools, and Oklahoma's already 49th, maybe 50th when it comes to education. The economy isn't working well for so many of our low-income families. Things like access to healthcare, quality healthcare, those are all issues that really impact, especially our Latino communities. And those are all issues that we should definitely want to continue to get involved with, because it shouldn't be the reactive issues that impact immigration that eventually does lead to people wanting to leave the state. It should also be a lot of those issues that impact every other aspect of our lives as well.
So recently, disparaging comments have been made by political figures and their affiliates, including a comedian at a rally for Donald Trump, calling Puerto Rico, quote, a floating island of garbage. And this can be a question for the whole panel, but Arturo, how do these types of comments affect Latino engagement in the political process? And what can Latino leaders do to counteract this rhetoric?
Yeah, and I definitely want to start by saying that those kind of comments should not be accepted, especially when it comes to, a lot of people that are leaders, right? Because they damage our communities in so many different ways. Puerto Rico is not what that comedian said it was. And it's just, and a lot of these are based out of misinformation, out of just being misguided. But those comments really do harm our community especially. And I hope a lot of people from the community, from our Latino community, are hearing that, because for one, we shouldn't accept it. We should always try to push back and show people that our different areas, Puerto Rico, so many other areas, they got their beauty and they contribute a lot in so many different ways to what the United States and what America even looks like. And it's bad leadership. It's not leadership at all to say those comments, to really bring people down. And I think we should definitely reject comments like that, because that's not good leadership.
I hope one of the impacts it has that it gets more people to show up to vote, right? Especially in swing states. And there you go, Francisco, But other than that, I think it's an unfortunate distraction, right? We should be focusing on policy. We should be focusing on the beautiful aspects of these different components of our communities. But instead, we have to focus on what this horrible comedian said at a political rally, which, like you said, and I agree, it shouldn't be acceptable, and it isn't.
All right, so now I got a couple questions from the audience that they filled out going to QR code, and they can ask them anonymously. So I'm just going to pick one from the very top. It says, they are good candidates on both sides of the aisle. How can we convince our Latino community members to learn from each platform and what is being offered for the community by each one of those parties?
So back there on the table, we have a voter's guide given to us by the Women's Voter League. There's nonpartisan information about each one of the candidates, describing their positions, what the questions that are on the ballots, and some more information on there. So it's about educating ourselves, doing our research, making sure that we are familiar with the candidates that are going to be on the ballot. And I encourage you to check out the table in the back. And then we also have a voter, a 4x6 voter plan, so that the day of, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes you wake up, you have this, big, beautiful plan that you're going to do tomorrow, and then you wake up and you forget, or you kind of wake up on the wrong side of the bed. I encourage you to check out the little 4x6 that we have back there. Put together a plan. Figure out how you're going to get there, who you're going to take with you, when you're going to go, where your polling place is. Being prepared is what I would say was important. Sylvia, is this guide digital? Okay. Okay. So the 4x6 voter plan that I was talking about, there's a QR code on there. You can scan it, and it gives you that guide in a digital format.
Can I add something to that? Because I think that question was very interestingly asked, right? There's good people on both sides. Yes, of course. And by the way, I'm independent. So I, in my core, believe that no party holds a monopoly on good ideas. So in theory, yes, absolutely. But I'm not going to let anybody get a pass this time, right? Because there are not good people in both parties. And I'm just going to be very clear. Until the Republican Party owns and calls out those, and they're not just bad comments, they're racist comments. Until the Republican Party, and mi gente, it starts with us. The only way we're going to keep these people accountable is by showing up. And I know we're tired. God, I know we're tired. And I know that we're busy caring for our family and paying for the bills and doing all of that. But that's what we mean by saying we have to proactively show up and vote for the right candidates and hold those that are calling us derogatory names and racist names out. And the only way to do that, the power is in our vote. The power is in showing up and holding the Republic, because it's one party that's saying this. It's not both. It's not happening on both. So we have to call it out, and we have to say it is one party, whether, and the whole deal is, well, not everybody's racist, not everybody's saying those racist comments. No, but the mere fact that you're not calling it out, that you're not holding your peers accountable and your party accountable, that makes you complicit.
All right, another question from the audience.
I want to say, I'm sorry.
Go for it.
I was turning off the microphone, but I don't know if there's a nice way to put this, but we don't convince people, right? You will not allow your children or your family members to be so disrespectful towards another person, period. Why would you allow the Republican Party to be so trashy against people, right? They're supposed to be there to represent the interests of everyone, period. And you don't convince them. How can we convince them that there's good people? There's not. I agree with that. No, we're not going to sugarcoat things, right? The DOJ, a accredited representative, during the election, the 8 years ago, during those 4 years of his administration, for the immigrant community in the legal system was the worst. It was horrible. Literally was horrible, and for people that practice it, it was even worse, having to deal with that. This time around, those comments, there are races, you would not allow a person to be so disrespectful in everyday life. People, those employers would not allow their employees to be disrespectful without consequences. So why are we even thinking about giving people a second chance? No, they know what they're running for. And I want to also say that DP also said, I don't care about you, I just want your vote. And for people to still trying to rule for the Republican nominee this time around, it's crazy. Those are nice words.
All right, well then, I guess I'll ask this question since it was brought up. It was in Spanish, so I'll try to translate it to English. Why do you guys think then that there are many Hispanics that are still going to vote for Trump?
I think a lot of it has to do with misinformation. I know personally some people who have told me they were planning on voting for Trump as a Hispanic, and I hope they really see that they are attacking the community. And even if you look through their policies, you'll know who's benefiting off of them, and there's one candidate that's who wants Latino men to start their business and help us in general. And there's another one that just, spreads this racism and fear into our community. And I just say to the community to please inform yourselves and know what's going on. And then you'll know.
I think that particularly Latino, since we're talking about Latinos, I'll go with Latino men. I think Latino men are hurting. I think young men are hurting throughout our nation. I think, social media has gotten a lot of our young men, sitting at home, not socializing, on the phone, and that has created a lot of loneliness, not having a partner to have fun with and stuff, and a lot of that turns into anger. And a lot of that, then you feed into misinformation, like Leslie was saying, and then the bro culture kicks in, right? Like, oh yeah, I'll have a company and invest in crypto and all of that, and you hear all of that in one side of the party, and we're not taking the time to your point in terms of education and resources to coach our kids to say, hey, this is actually how you build a sustainable business. Or this is how you invest, not just through crypto, bro. But we have to do a lot of that, and a lot of it starts at home, but that's why it's also so important to put the resources in school and in our community so that we can coach our kids at a younger age on how you do build sustainability, how do you build good relationships, how do you get out in the community so that they don't get so sucked into these groups that are telling them how to be a bro in a culture that honestly doesn't want them, right? So I do think it's misinformation, but I also think it's loneliness, it's mental health, and it's us bringing awareness that our young men, especially in the Latino and the Black and brown communities, are hurting.
Yeah, definitely want to second a lot of what was said because it's true. I mean, misinformation, fear, anger does lead to, individuals from our communities believing things that aren't really reality oftentimes. And I know one thing I've noticed too, especially in this race, is that oftentimes people really vote based off of vibes and not really meaningful policy stances. And it does go into the level of education because, we're not equipping our young people, especially young Latino males, to know how to navigate and really understand misinformation whenever they see it. So I think that is something important that we need to instill within our educational institutions, the ability to know how to look at an article and recognize, there are these different biases being presented. And it's important to also make sure we're giving our young people, especially those young Latino males, some more love, because oftentimes they're having to take on a lot. I know I have a lot of friends that, will be having a lot of just political conversations, and they're, super for Trump. And I'm like, man, but, your parents are immigrants, right? Have you heard about what he's saying about immigrants? You probably believe what he's saying about, doing these mass deportations. And it's like, oh, well, he's just saying that, Like, no, but like, it's like whenever people, that are running for one of the most powerful positions in the world, say things like that, we should really think about it. And if it's one of those things where like, man, like, they're just saying it just to say it, like, they're not just saying it just to say it, like, there's actual some intent behind it. And whether it be instilling fear or whether it be actually, getting people these mass deportations, it's not productive, and it doesn't lead to good governance or just really a good government that is meant to be serving the people.
And in the interest of keeping ourselves accountable, there's that side of what I just said, but I'm going to hold ourselves accountable. A lot of it also has to do with proximity to power. A lot of our community, if they have reached positions of power or influence by association to the Republican Party or through association through certain individuals in the Republican Party, by God, they're going to hold on to that position even at the cost of our own community. And that's what I call a sellout. Those exist too.
So a question specifically for Leslie. What message do you have that you can tell all the young people that can vote to come out and vote?
Get involved and vote. We've seen in the past that bills like HB 14156 do affect us negatively. And we don't really know the severity of it until it comes to us. But we shouldn't wait for it to come to us. We should first attack what we've been missing here in Oklahoma, and that's the lack of engagement in voting participation. So I definitely think if you acknowledge yourself just enough, you can vote. The resources that Salvador was giving out, I mean, look into those. Because why not? Why aren't you voicing your voice? Especially in the Hispanic community where there's immigrants who cannot. And so you have to be the voice for them, but you also have to be the voice for yourself and for the community. Thank you.
We have a question that was sent to me that I'd like to field to you, the panelists. Let's see here. It's a little long, so bear with me. It says, yesterday, Superintendent Ryan Walters sent a letter to Vice President Harris demanding nearly $400 million be refunded to Oklahoma for funding the education of children who came from undocumented parents. Specifically, he called these students, quote unquote, illegal immigrant children. As a Latino leader in Oklahoma, what's your response to the letter? How does it read to people with immigrant parents who were raised and went to school in Oklahoma?
Well, I know one thing to that. It's like, why are we focusing on attacking a segment of students when we're one of the worst states in the nation when it comes to education? There's a lot that we can really be talking about when it comes to actual policy solutions to make Oklahoma a better state for our kids. Because our kids are struggling right now. Our teachers are struggling. Our administrators are struggling because we're not paying them enough. Classrooms are overcrowded. And yet the state superintendent wants to focus on a segment of students that he should be serving, because there's laws that show that we should provide a free and public education for all students, regardless of immigration status. And that's already the law. So his job as state superintendent is to make sure he's serving those students well. Because if we attack and really marginalize this group of students, it's not gonna make Oklahoma a better state. And I think it's important for us to really focus on more policy-focused conversations, because this is just another distraction. Superintendent Walters just wants the limelight, wants to be on a spotlight, and wants to distract away from actual meaningful policy solutions.
I'll just add one comment. The danger of not educating our young people far outweighed the cost that it takes.
Okay. So
One more thing, because let's talk about the economics, okay? This country, the Social Security would not be here if it wasn't for undocumented immigrants paying damn taxes. So I wish Ryan Walters was here to have a real conversation, because the guy lacks so much depth that he has to rely on these fear tactics because he can't solve a damn thing in our education system, right? So as leaders, and I know even if you're not civically engaged, if you are at your work, and every time you call in an employee and ask them, hey, why are you not performing? Why is this not getting done? And that person is always pointing fingers at other people, right? Or creating fear or attacking their coworkers. That's because they have no leadership skills. And that is Ryan Walters. But back to undocumented immigrants. I am so sick of this. First of all, if you really know Latinos, we actually have a toxic trait, and I say toxic because I'm very proud of it, but we love working. We attach our identity so much with hard work, to the point that sometimes we kill ourselves working. We don't believe in self-care and all of that stuff because, we have to work hard. We also believe in small government, and we don't, opposite to popular belief in the Republican Party, we don't like government handouts, right? We just don't. We don't like to rely on them. So, and on top of that, undocumented immigrants they don't get a social security number, but they do get a number where they get to contribute to taxes. We absolutely pay taxes. I was pulling the numbers because I don't have the latest ones. But we pay billions of dollars in taxes, and because they're undocumented, we don't claim them back. And that's why the Social Security is still up to date right now.
I also, this is my response. Someone that texted me this earlier, and I was reading the comments, and I said that I believe that we need to highlight the fact that he's asking the wrong person for the reimbursement. It's surprising that being the superintendent of education, he doesn't know how the government works, because it's a reality. Oklahoma, it is the 49th, is ranked 49th in education. And then I go, assuming that undocumented children are taken away from education, the real fact is that, according to the census, the undocumented community pays more in billions in state taxes. I said, where is my reimbursement for the taxes that I pay and I haven't claimed yet? The fact that we still have politicians to this day that rely on fake news or fake facts to just draw attention, it is unbelievable, but that it is happening. And that the rest of the nation Oklahoma is the laughing stock. It is, when it comes to ignorant and racist comments and remarks the politicians and people in office direct themselves when they talk like that about the immigrant community. And I can go on because obviously I wrote a whole paragraph article here on my text, as I was pointing out, that we're 49th in healthcare, right? We are the 48th in overall for the worst women's leadership across the board. Women in Oklahoma are suffering from high incarceration. And I went on all of the things, but then we worry about the undocumented community. By the way, we believe in purchasing our properties, and we have multiple, I myself. And we pay property taxes, that a percentage of that goes to education. So the fact that, again, we have these people in office making these nasty rhetorics and trying to highlight themselves and be the center of attention with the wrong people that actually know the facts, is, for us, it's like so crazy to even think about that we have to talk. We have to address these situations because it's like you're in office. And I can't believe that I'm more knowledgeable about this than they are, right? But that's why I can't wait to become a citizen, honestly.
Okay, so now closing remarks from panelists. Looking ahead, what do you guys envision as the next steps to increase Latino representation and our influence in the civic landscape?
I'll go first again. I go back to my experience as a teacher. I think our future is in educating the students and getting them involved. Some people touched on this a little earlier, is that our experiences growing up is we are our parents' interpreters. And I think that's still the case when it comes to civic engagement, is our parents, they sacrifice so much, whether they're first, they immigrated here themselves or they're second generation, they sacrifice so much trying to get to a place where they could provide for us, right? And in doing that, they weren't able to engage in politics and civic life, or it came second priority to them. And so as leaders now, I think it's incumbent upon us to reach out to the younger generation, whether you're a teacher, a lawyer like myself, a professional in whatever regard, and make sure that they're getting involved in an active way, and that they are able to influence other people around them, because we have so much power, especially if we look at the demographics of our young generation, right? When it comes to the Latino community, that's where our power is going to be. We're pretty dang powerful right now, especially if we were to engage in the way we should be engaging. But imagine if we got our younger generation, a much larger group of people involved and informed about this stuff. So that's to me is where I find the hope too.
I think we need to help question the systems that keep our families from building economic mobility and building wealth, so that they can be stable and then they can take time to volunteer and to go to communities. So having said that, I also think we need to reinvest in ourselves, right? I know that, and I say that and I'm like, oh, did I donate to Arturo's campaign or Sam's when he was running? But we just need to put our money where our mouth is, right? And we need to support. A lot of what has happened is we've developed this scarcity mindset, right? Because there's so few of us at the top or so few of us at the legislature, we start competing with one another instead of supporting one another. So we can't do that. We're here together and we're not going to get, we can't do it alone. So we need to invest in campaigns when our Latinos, brothers and sisters, are running for office. We need to invest in organizations like LULAC and the Latino Community Agency that are doing the work. We need to start there. And then we need to show up. And I hadn't heard this stupid-ass comment from Ryan Walters, but I hope that this is our Puerto Rico moment. I hope that this ignites all of us to show up to vote, and don't wait until Tuesday. Go to vote tomorrow. Go to vote Friday. And your job is not done after you vote. You go get your friends and you go get your family and you post on social media and you make sure that every single one of us shows up to vote.
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, just next steps for us.
I got to think about the text and stuff that I was reading that it just threw me off right now because it's so angering, right? But we gotta channel the fear. We gotta channel that angriness that we have into action. I often tell people that, and I always do this in Spanish, so when I translate it into English, it doesn't sound the same, but we gotta make sure that there's, dice que el cobarde vive, ¿cómo dice? El dicho de que el valiente dura hasta que el cobarde quiere. I used to think of that saying as, but we always say that if you're brave, then why is it that, that we gotta turn down? But sometimes the people out there, they're not brave. They're attacking another human being, a group of people in general, and they're not the bravest people. They're actually the villains in the story. And when I go into the community and I talk to them, it's not also about not convincing. It's more about asking them what their thoughts are, or what do you want to know about this election that you don't know. I ask questions, and the reason is, people, like when I mentioned the comment about that you wouldn't allow your family member to be so disrespectful, because it's true. often the miscommunication and the ignorance is sometimes that we have in politics and policy and in all of those subjects makes us believe everything that we read, and it doesn't mean that it's correct. So sometimes when they said, oh, I'm gonna vote for Trump, and believe me, my dad is one of those persons that the friends that he has around, if they're Republicans, he holds on to those. And I often ask, like, what is a benefit to you? Like, why would you, I mean, I understand them, but why is it that you are so into thinking that he is the choice, right? And when he starts telling me why, then I start questioning that. Like, have you read about this, right? Like, so give them the information. A lot of people lack that information. And I agree with Erika. I think the people from Puerto Rico will show up this time. And, you know, Latinos are proud. They are proud. And aside from getting handouts from the government, believe me, they don't even get handouts from our own family. We don't like people to throw that in our face, right? We don't like people to blackmail us. Oh, I helped you this. No, no. You know, that we are so hardworking. We are that type of, that ethic that we have about making sure that we work hard for what we have. And that's why we are so proud and loud. So I would say those are my closing remarks, is educate the people around you, because we got to start somewhere.
Yeah, and it starts with getting more educated and getting informed. So for sure, I mean, go out and vote. If you have the ability to vote, please vote. We have elections early. We have early voting going on right now, and then November 5th, the general election. If you're not able to vote, or if you can but want to do more, there's so many different organizations you can get involved with. Organizations like LULAC, the League of United Latin American Citizens, Dream Act Oklahoma, supporting organizations like the LCDA, and so many others that are really trying to build up the community and really trying to build more awareness around what's happening within the political world, within civic engagement. There's a lot we can do to get involved. I mean, to the young people, find a mentor. I would not be here if it wasn't for the people that really, really motivated me and pushed me in the right directions. And I can definitely say that a lot of people up on this panel, I mean, I consider y'all my mentors. You too, Leslie, you're my mentor. I learned a lot from you so far. Because we can learn a lot from so many different people, and we can't do it alone. We have to lean on people that have a little bit more knowledge and a little bit more expertise. And as one of the youngest elected officials, I have to lean on a lot of people that just have more lived experience than me. Can't do it alone, that's for sure. And I think to the older folks, be a mentor too. If you see a young leader, someone that has that potential, really trying to find a way to push them and really help them realize what that potential is. Because there's so many young leaders that have the potential to be, I mean, world changing. And we really need to be investing in those young people. Because all too often, I'll be seeing young people fall through the cracks, kids that are capable, smart, talented, that want change, that are hungry for change, but oftentimes they just don't know what resources are available. So let's keep providing those kids those resources, investing in them with our time, with our money, with our knowledge. There's so many things that we can do, and it's, you know, if you're a journalist, make sure you tap into those young journalists. If you're an engineer, you know, help build some robots with them. There's so many things that we can do regardless of our backgrounds. And I think to the people that might not be as connected with the Latino community, I mean, start paying attention to the Latino community in your area. And I'll kind of share a quick story about my dad, because, you know, my dad still works as a landscaper. And a lot of his clients, he'll be going to Edmond, a lot of parts that don't have a lot of, I mean, higher populations of Latinos like we do here in the South Side. And and every week, some weekends I'll be going to help him, you know, get the weed eater, do some lawn mowing, trimming some bushes. And he has a reoccurring client that he's had for a few years now. And my dad had mentioned a little bit about him. He's a Republican, and he was mentioning, yeah, before, like, he was kind of like not the most welcoming, but you know, we became like super close friends. And a few weeks ago, I went to actually met the guy, and he was telling me the story about like how initially, like, he was really buying into a lot of the misinformation about Latinos taking over the United States, being, you know, criminals and all these other things. But my dad kept coming back weekend after weekend, and he was like, man, like, and then he's like, yeah, I started talking to your dad, and I started realizing like we have a lot in common. Initially I didn't really, I just need someone to mow my lawn, but I just had this weird feeling that like, oh, like he's not supposed to be here. But then after they started really getting to know each other, they became super close friends. And I know like, I think last time they'll hug each other. And it's because they started really like, the guy who had the house, he started seeing my dad as more of a human being, as a dad, as a friend. And he stopped believing a lot of what he was seeing on the news. He was like, man, like, he's just trying to work hard, trying to provide for his family. He brings his kids out, like, man, like, and so he really started seeing that sense of connection with my dad. And initially that wasn't the case. And that was super motivating to see someone kind of change their perspective just by getting to know members of that community. And, we're products oftentimes of the people we surround ourselves with. And I know, working with people up at the Capitol, oftentimes they haven't surrounded themselves with people that don't look or talk like them. So I'll be having to navigate conversations with people that, it's like they've never had a conversation with a young Latino. It's like, hey, you don't always have to mention that you go to Cancun or that you like to eat tacos. Like, I like baseball. I'm an engineer. There's a lot of other things we can talk about. Yeah, and I mean, let's keep making sure we take control of that narrative because, like I said, Latinos are hardworking, really contributing a lot to the state of Oklahoma.
Well, this is mostly for the young Latinos. I've already mentioned this before, but do get involved and register to vote. There are many ways you could engage with our community civically, whether it's posting something online, finding a mentor to get further ahead, or anything of that sort. But be part of that conversation, be part of that change, and do something. Otherwise, our Hispanic community will keep being swept under the rug. But us more than anyone knows that we are alike to be reckoned with. And I hope we just act like it. Thank you.
So, next steps. It's time. It's time to get involved, guys. It's our time. If not us, then who? If not now, then when? The Latino Agency is committed to continuing to provide nonpartisan education and resources. We will continue our voter registration efforts. We're here to serve the community in every way that we can, be it physical health, mental health, youth programs, prevention programs. But more importantly, we're here to advocate for you. And we have to show up. We got to be the ones to show up at the polls. And you know what? We need to not just show up on November 5th, but all of our local elections. The questions and decisions, the decisions that our city council members make on a day in, day out basis affect us more locally than who's president of the United States, believe it or not. Our local elections, like our local, our state senators and congressmen, the decisions that they make on our behalf are even more important to us than who's in Washington. And so we have to show up, and we need to be able to stand up and elect those who represent the needs and the needs and the hopes and dreams that our community has. And so thank you guys all for being here. Thank you for being here, and thank you to our panelists. I appreciate you, and again, I'm really honored to be here. Thank you.
Before Daschel, before our final thank yous, this young lady couldn't get her question through the app and really needs to have a question.
Okay, thank you. So talking about students in general and like the future Latino community and stuff, I noticed that we lack a lot of people like coming to school and talking about anything in general. We don't have people like from the government and anything ever from like, oh, like people who are helping people at banks and stuff like that. People who have so many jobs and opportunities to offer for students, we never hear about them. And recently I got to represent Oklahoma for this year in the Girls Moonshot community. It was a very big experience, and I would have never figured out about it unless it was for my principal and my teacher. So I noticed that we lack a lot of like opportunities for Hispanics and stuff like that. And a lot of it is usually swept under the rug, as Leslie was saying. And I noticed a bunch of people also tend to say, oh, well, they usually look like they have a bunch of opportunities. Like, there's so much focus around the Hispanic community, Latino community. But in reality, that's not true. And I literally had to work my way up recently to finally hear people from NASA and stuff talk to me finally, because it's so hard to get involved, especially if you're a student who just is usually swept under the rug. And for my questioning is, will there soon be people coming to schools, especially where there's like in the Southwest area and stuff, or will there just be like nothing ever said?
So what school do you go to?
Dove Science Academy, high school.
Okay. So, the Latino Agency, we just relaunched our Latino clubs, which allow us to go into our students' schools and provide resources and education above and beyond what the school system is providing. We want to be able to support you in whatever dreams you have. Bring in speakers who possibly could mentor or at least share with you their stories and inspire you to be what you want to be. And so Dove is on our list. We're currently focusing on Oklahoma City Public Schools specifically, but I think that there are resources coming, and it's just a matter of time. But thank you for your question, and I completely, I feel you. Representation matters. And if you don't see someone that looks like you, that sounds like you, that it has a similar story as you, it's really hard for you to see yourself in that position, right? I grew up Southside Oklahoma City, and it wasn't until I was invited by the LCDA to a conference that I saw a ballroom full of Latino leaders wearing suits and ties and talking about big dreams and big things that they were doing back in their city that really inspired me to come back to Oklahoma City and do what I can to help my community. And so, brave question, and absolutely, I think that there are resources out there. We also have mentorship and tutoring programs after school. You're welcome to get connected with me, and I get you connected with the right person. And then we also have, thanks to the help of our representative here, our very first Southside Robotics Club, where we are.
SSRC.
And I'll let you talk a little bit more about that, but we're very, very proud of those efforts, and what we want to do is engage the young people. You guys are the future. You guys are the ones coming up next, and so we need to be able to provide you with the right resources and opportunities. So.
Thank you, Sal, and thank you so much for the question. And I'm happy to go visit Dove to speak and try to engage some students, especially when it comes to the elections. That maybe it'll happen post-elections to talk about that. But thank you for speaking up, because oftentimes I know growing up, we had very few people come visit. I mean, Senator Brooks was one of the few that came out and really showed us that, like, hey, like, we need to start getting involved. But I know I'm happy to go visit Dove Science Academy. Earlier this week, we were at US Grants trying to recruit some students for SSRC, Southside Robotics Club. But oftentimes, we have the opportunity to go for different reasons, right? To go speak and just share our story. To go speak and bring in a group like LULAC, maybe. And really show you all the different opportunities. So I'd love to get your contact info, and we can set something up. So happy to work together with you.
Thanks, Waddle. I just wanted to thank you for reminding us. I think that's what we need sometimes. It's just we forget. And I hope you remember when you grew up and you're very successful at NASA or wherever you're going to end up, that you come back to Southside Oklahoma City and you talk to students too, because we need those reminders all the time that we need to be giving back and getting back into our communities. in our schools.
So my question is going to be a follow-up to what kind of, it's going to piggyback off what she asked, but my question is, why do you guys dump so many resources into adults? Because from what I'm getting from this whole panel is adults just don't have the time or they're just too busy. That could be the truth, but I personally believe that they just don't care. So why not invest all the additional resources and time into the kids, the ones who are going to make a difference in the future? Because I do believe the older generation, they're just not going to care at all. So I don't spend more time with the kids, making more programs for them. So, in the future, sure, it's going to take time, 5, 10 years, but that's where the real change is going to happen. Sure, it's not going to be immediate, but you're setting them up for success.
So you're absolutely right. But to do what you're just asking us requires systems change, right? It requires policies to be passed for the government to put, we're talking about Ryan Walters here, and totally we've lost programming, we've lost federal funding, we've lost state funding. We're putting Bibles in every school, but we can't fit our children and we can't do programs for people. So I'm with you 100%, and I definitely think that we should invest in our youth, but it's going to require system change, and for systems change to change, we need to show up and vote. That's the only reason I'm referring more on the responsibility of those 18 and up. But to your point, all of my hope is in the new generation. The new generation is not settling for what we settled. They're speaking up. They're not gonna, they're just not gonna settle. That's what I see. And to your point, we need to double down on them, but we also need to recognize that we still need the older generation to show up and vote so that we can change the systems and then invest in our youth.
Yeah, I agree with the sentiment too, and I think I've expressed it myself here that I have a lot of hope in the future, but I also don't feel like older generations so much a lost cause. I think they need just as much education, if not more. Like I said, I think it's kind of incumbent upon the young people they get more informed, that have more access, easier access to this information. Generations now are growing up with cell phones in their hand. They have easy access to great information and bad information. But I think it's also important that we involve the older generations, the older members of our family and our communities in these conversations, that we do supply resources for them to get informed on things. And it could be something as basic as what the League of Women Voters is providing as a nonpartisan voter guide on what's out there. Because my mom, I think I'm her source of political information, right? When it comes to an election, she just asks me what to vote for. I'm like, no, it's not just like that. I can't just tell you who to vote for or how to vote. I want you to ask questions about it. I want you to be informed about it, right? So I think there's a role for both and, right? Not one or the other.
I think as a parent, it's kind of hard when you count. I'm Mexican, okay? I grew up. My parents are, very old-fashioned. But when I started advocating as a dreamer back in 2008, it's actually way before that. I earned a full ride scholarship as an undocumented individual in 2005. And when I started college, I had to explain to my parents of why I needed support from them while I was full-time student, still have a full-time job. And I was already a mother. The reason why I spend time educating the adults is because a lot of the youth, and I see it with my children, my 17-year-old doesn't have a job. I want her to, she's in Key Club, she's in the Hispanic Association, she's in marching band, and she wrestled last year for 2 years. And why I wanted her to take advantage of that is because it is important for me to understand, for her to understand that the hope it's in the future. But a lot of her peers in school have to, at 16, they have to get a job to be able to help support the household. And I think that is not, that's why they said it's a sacrifice. I have talked to some parents from my peers of my children and for classmates, where I told them, you want your child to go to college, we also need to invest in getting them in networkings and bring them to school activities and all of that, because it is important for them to put on those college applications. The teachers wrote recommendation letters for my daughter. She got accepted to Wichita State, and she's a senior this year. But if it wasn't because as a youth myself, I had to ask for support of my parents and explain to them why I needed them to help me. And it wasn't necessarily monetary, but it was more about, can you babysit my children? And there was times where my mom questioned about whether I was wasting my time in school, because she only went through elementary school herself. And I agree. We have to teach our children how the system works. And within our Mexican community, they lack that information, right? We want our children to go to college, but because of the lack of resources in schools on the south side of Oklahoma City, our children have to have a part-time job in the evenings to be able to help the household. How can we expect our children to be successful when we as a parent don't put their education first either? And I don't want to rant here, and I don't want to judge anybody, because that's not what I'm trying to do. But while we hope for the better future in a youth, we as a parent, as adults ourselves, we also have to make sure that we're educated, to make sure that we are transferring that knowledge to our children on why it's important to get civically engaged as well. And another thing that I've also looked at, and I don't know if y'all that are more experienced than me in the whole political realm, but I also see that right now the way our system works and policies have been put in place is for our grandparents out there that are more politically involved than not even people my generation. They don't, in the Hispanic community, they're not even involved in politics. And the ones that are making those changes, like approving HB 4156, it's the older generation. And is the reason why we need to educate our older generation on how to support the youth and the future generations. Is because we want to change, and that we also have to target that, right? So for her to say she's in a school that it's providing limited networking and resources for Hispanic students, she said she just realized that. So yes, we need to have more. By the way, we gotta I'm involved in the PTA and started a PTA at US Grant. Yes. They haven't had a PTA in the last 15 years, and believe me, right now it's really hard. And I know parents that have their children at that school, and it's been very hard for them to get them into a freaking meeting. Said, well, what do you have hopes for your children? So like I said, we have to educate our older generation to be able to support the youth. That's what I have to say. We also have to invest in that, because our parents would not, our Hispanic parents are very stubborn. And sometimes they're thinking about making ends meet first before everything else. So you mentioned it was something about wealth, economic wealth. We have to be able to help them achieve that and give them financial literacy to be able to budget their income more, to make them successful in that area, because we got to take care of them as well. While I get involved in my children's school. Not everybody has that privilege to do.
Thank you. Thank you.
But
And just very briefly, when it comes to those opportunities that oftentimes are lacking, especially within our youth, we kind of got to be the change we want to see too. I mean, growing up, I never had a robotics club that I could go into and learn the skills, learn how to program, design, and build a robot. But that's why I was motivated to work with other engineers, work with the LCDA, work with the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. And then a group of us just was like, hey, let's try to find a way to start this robotics club and create an opportunity for these young people, because we didn't have this, but now we're engineers. We were able to make it and get our education, and now we're going back and finding a way to create that opportunity for young people. I mean, Erika, she's been able to do some awesome work in supporting startups, small businesses. So it's going to take that initiative to really create these opportunities, because the Latino community is only continuing to grow. And it's a community that the age average is really low because we have a lot of young people, a lot of families with kids. And as the community grows, those opportunities got to grow too. We got to make sure, like, if we have an area of expertise that we're experts in, that we have a passion for, and we see a lack of those opportunities, those extracurriculars, or those student organizations, then let's create them. Let's find people that are like-minded. And then it's going to take investment too. So it's going to be able to, people need to buy into those ideas too. We've had the chance to apply to a bunch of grants and receive some grants as well. But we could always use more when it comes to the robotic club. And that's just one example. I know there's people that, we didn't always have a Latino film group, but we have that now. And it took hard work, it took investment, and it took people sacrificing a bit of their time. They were initially, and they might still just be doing it as volunteers, but they're developing the future, filmmakers of Oklahoma within the Latino community. And that's something that, we didn't always have, but someone had a passion, they saw a need, and they took the initiative to create something that wasn't there before. And those are the opportunities that we need to continue to see. Because there is potential. There's kids that want to invest their time and energy into things that are productive. But oftentimes, because they don't have that, they get into things that aren't the most productive. Then we see things like, gun violence. We see things like, kids getting into things that just aren't really helping them move forward in life. And it's tough to see that because, like I said, these are kids with potential, with drive, with intellect, but those resources are lacking. Growing up in the south side of Oklahoma City, being, the son of immigrant parents, oftentimes you don't know what's available and what's not. But it's going to take more efforts from us that see the need, that have an area of expertise, to really get out there and try to create something that isn't already there. Yeah, and it's going to take following through. It's going to take commitment.
60 seconds.
Okay, yes, go for it. Sorry, guys, we only have this place booked
60
until 8,
seconds.
so yes, absolutely, go ahead.
Interesting statistic. The average Anglo-American in the United States age is 58 years old. The average Latino in the United States is 11 years old. Bro, we haven't matured yet as a population. We need these old folks to get it together, vote, and get these young people in a position to be successful in their lives. And I agree. We need to pour as much resources as we can to our young people, get them prepared, get them in position. But we still need our adults and our people of age to continue the fight and continue to better themselves.
Wow, you guys, I commend all of you for showing up tonight and just putting your experience out there for us to listen to. And I am so appreciative of Daschel. Thank you so much for helping me, put this panel together and execute this event. Tango PR, y'all are amazing. Y'all really just had it together. A round of applause for Tango PR, honestly. Without them, this event would not have been possible, and I'm incredibly grateful. So again, thank you, panelists. Guys, thank you so much for showing up. And Dash, again, thank you.
And then thank you to everyone who came. Thank you for the Cantera Event Center for allowing us to be here, and to Moderators, to all the panelists. We really appreciate your time. I know that on a Wednesday afternoon you have other stuff to do, and so this is so important. Thank you, Yesenia, for allowing us just to come together. Thank you to the Oklahoman and to Telemundo. And with that, guys, we appreciate all of you being here. Continue to follow up. Remember, your job has to allow you to have 2 hours to go vote on Tuesday. So go vote.